Would it be better with them?
We can time it on the lights. We can do this if you want, or we could turn them off in the back where it's light up front. Depends.
That's
They
okay.
have their handout, so
Yeah.
that's the only
Okay.
slide that's allowed. Yeah.
Yes, yes. All right, we ready? Okay. Of course. Yeah. Okay. I'll put your name on that. Yes. Want it to be added? Okay. Can you be added? Does anyone else not have it in their BB9-8? No? Okay.
All right, since we'll get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I just want to get a little bit of information about your knowledge of financial aid, and then we can go from there. So my name is Shilu again, and I've been in financial aid for about 15 years, and I started out as a counselor in our office, overseeing the loan programs, and then I changed over to scholarships and was managing scholarships, and just recently became the director in our office. So about 15 years. And over that time, you know, what I've learned, because I came from an environment where I didn't know anything about financial aid. And so sometimes when you put yourself back into those shoes and you think about the students, and a lot of them, especially if they're just graduating and they've never had any brothers or sisters that have gone to college and they know nothing about financial aid, it can be kind of scary for them. And so, you know, even just hearing the term financial aid and hearing the term FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, it sounds so overwhelming and so complicated. And that fear then drives, you know, that whole, how do I do it? Can I do it? You know, is there money to help me pay for college? All those questions start going through a student's mind. So it's a little scary for them. So our job in our office is to try to help them through that, because our goal is to help students go to college, help them finance their education through financial aid. And one of the things that, you know, we try to do also is they seek us for help, but we also want to have them help themselves, because a lot of the information is not as scary as they believe it to be, and it's all on the web now, and so easy to access and so easy to process, but it's just baby steps to get them through. And especially if we can help them as new students when they come in as freshmen, then gosh, over the next, you know, 3-4 years as they're going through school, then it becomes easier every year. And we want to encourage as many students as possible to do their financial aid applications, because some of them, they have access to free money and they don't even know it because they think that the process is too scary and that they wouldn't qualify. So as far as financial aid background, how many of you have some knowledge of financial aid and you've worked in the financial aid aspect of this? Can I see hands? Okay, so you might be familiar with some terms and things. How many of you have never had any financial aid experience at all? Are there any newbies? So you all have a little bit of information, so you'll have some background here. So when we're talking about terms and things like that, if there's something, we use a lot of acronyms, and hopefully we've kind of not used too many here in the presentation, but if there's something that comes up that you don't understand, or it's complicated, raise your hands, because we want to help you really understand this so that you can help the students that call in. The objective really for us today is really how can we help those students understand the process and get through the process. I'm going to turn it over to Julie, and she's going to lead us on the application side and the first part of it.
Sure. So the first thing that we generally will ask students about when it comes to financial aid is, have you applied for financial aid? And what is the first step that a student needs to do in order to apply for financial aid? Any guesses? Complete the FAFSA. And what does FAFSA stand for? Oh, I'm hearing some wrong answers though. Free application for federal student aid. What's the first word in FAFSA? Free. Does a student ever have to pay to complete their FAFSA? No. So we never want them to pay that $75 that there's some little snakes of some companies out there that charge to do that FAFSA. But it's the free application for federal student aid. So we really want to make sure that we're emphasizing that when we're on the phone with a student or in a chat, is making sure when they're at that first stop and they're really checking, what do I need to do to complete the FAFSA? Make sure that you go to what website? FAFSA.gov or FAFSA.ed.gov. So they've shortened it now, so we can just go to FAFSA.gov. That .gov being the most important little part there. .gov. Because if they end up on .com or they end up on .org, they're going to be asking for their credit card information at the end of that FAFSA. We need to back out of that website and make sure that we go to .gov. Those are the most important things when it comes to the first step of applying for federal student aid. And we really believe in our office, our philosophy is really that financial aid is about empowerment. Shilu talked about us really wanting to make sure that we empower the student to feel equipped to do their own FAFSA. So I might help you in my office the first time we do the FAFSA, but next year, I'm going to be handing those reins over to you. I just got an email from a student this morning that was asking me, Julie, can I come in and do my FAFSA? You know what, this is year number 3. I really think that we need to try to do this on our own. So I'm going to direct him out to the website. I'm going to give him some advice, little helpful hints of things that he can do to get that completed. But we're going to try to be backing out a little bit so that we're not handling as much when it comes to that FAFSA. At FAFSA.gov, students will be making sure that they need to sign electronically with their PIN number. And there's 2 different types of students that file the FAFSA. We have students that are dependent and students that are independent. Which one of those students might have to ask a parent to sign their FAFSA as well? A dependent student might have to have their parent be signing their FAFSA. And what do they sign their FAFSA with? The PIN. And how many digits is the PIN number? 4. All right, you guys really know your stuff. We're done. We're going to pack up. I'll see you in Wichita. One common question that we get from students, although not as common as it probably used to be, but what's our FAFSA PIN number? Or our FAFSA code, school code, sorry, our FAFSA school code. 001950. It's pretty simple because it kind of sounds like a date, right? 001950. So you might get that question. And this is where we get a little bit more technical into the kind of the flavor of Wichita State University in our financial aid office. There is not really a deadline for our FAFSA, okay? With the exception of the final deadline being like June 30th of the following year. So we just passed the deadline. June 30th of 2014 was the deadline for submitting a 2013-2014 FAFSA, right? I'm seeing lots of nodded heads like, I got this, I get this. Okay. Our FAFSA deadline for the 2014-2015 year will be June 30th of 2015. We do have a priority date because we have some extras that get the little sprinkles that go on the top of what our standard cake of financial aid is. So we want to get students all the sprinkles, all the toppings, okay? And to be qualified for those extras, one, you have to be eligible for those programs that are the extras, but we also need your FAFSA by March 1st. So that's our priority date for Wichita State. Big note there. You guys are also very familiar with just the process of what happens when they file their FAFSA. Then the government kind of checks on some things, right? They send it out and they are checking with Department of Homeland Security, the person's not a terrorist. They're making sure that the student actually, their social security number matches with the name associated with that student. And after they've done those checks, the student gets what back to the student gets what? Student aid report, SAR, okay? And vice versa, what does FAFSA send to the school? An ISER. And what does ISER stand for? Institutional Student Information Record, that's right.
Julie, can I add one thing?
Sure.
So Julie mentioned the thing about whether a student is dependent or independent and that they have to put their parent information. That's a question that gets asked a lot is they'll call in and they'll say, you know, I'm an independent student, I live on my own, and
I do my own taxes.
I do my own taxes, and they want to be independent, and they don't want to report their parent information. However, the FAFSA itself, they are required to do that if they meet the certain criteria. If they are under 24, it's not based on them paying their own bills. It is specific questions on the FAFSA that makes them either independent or dependent. So you just have to keep that in mind, that they do have to file as a dependent if they don't meet those qualifications.
And we have a very high threshold at our institution that we follow the federal regulations for determining a student to be independent or dependent. And we do have an opportunity for a dependency override, but only in very rare circumstances. That student has been abused and there's police reports, that student has been abandoned by the parents, and now they've been maybe raised by a grandparent. We set those very high standards because we want to make sure that we're in compliance, because if we're not in compliance with our federal financial aid policies, then we don't get to disperse aid to our students, and that's a real problem, because about 65% of our students at Wichita State do receive some form of financial aid. So that's a really big deal why we have to follow the rules. And sometimes that really can ease a student's mind when they get frustrated about it, is just advising them that these are the regulations, and the government tries to be as fair across the board as we can. Not all of us qualify for the free money, and not all of us end up qualifying to be independent, even though we think that our parents aren't. My parents didn't write a big check to send me to school, so it's all loans for me. It looks like we have a team activity up next. Or am I on the wrong?
That was to ask someone to read the bullet points?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which
I
you've gone
skipped-
over
I
them.
skipped something.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay.
Okay, so we'll go to the next slide.
They can read those bullet points.
And in order to fill out their FAFSA, there's a couple of things that they will want to kind of have sitting with them. They want to know they need to know their social security number, and it's really important that they use the correct one, because otherwise it's going to come back as a rejected ICER to our office, and it's going to hold up the process. And you guys are all about everything that moves us through the process, right? We don't want to be stuck in any phase, okay? So we need our social security number. If we're going to have to provide that parent information, we need our parents' social security numbers. We also encourage them to include their driver's license number on their FAFSA, but it's not required. So they don't have to put it on there, but it's kind of a nice other little check to make sure that that person is who they say that they are. And if they're not a U.S. citizen, but they are a permanent resident, we're going to need their alien registration number. What does an alien registration number typically start with? Anyone know? An A. I heard it. Very good. Okay. An A, and then I think 9 more digits. So the next slide goes into talking about what type of financial information they will need to have with them to complete that FAFSA. And because you guys are all familiar with this, name one thing that you have to have. Tax return, if you file taxes. Okay. Why would we need their W-2 information? Because what? Sometimes because of the income, because there is a question that not only asks what is your adjusted gross income. So if you think about a couple that is married, they've got maybe both individuals in the household that are working, they've got that adjusted, it's gross, it's total. But then it's going to ask, what is parent one's? How much wages did they earn? And how much did parent two earn in that? So that's why their W-2s are really helpful for them when they're completing their FAFSA, but it's not required that they have those with them. Typically, it just really helps when we're trying to sort out how much did parent one make and how much did parent two make. So those are the benefits of that W-2. Do they have to have their taxes done in order to file their FAFSA?
No.
No. Okay. And what can they do if they don't have them done? What kind of information would they enter? They would mark will file on their FAFSA, and then they would do what? And yes, they will file at a later date, and then they will use estimated tax information. So then maybe if they made a similar income to last year, we could actually just put in last year's tax information, last year's tax return, and then when we do file our taxes, we'll go in and correct our FAFSA. So they can use estimated tax information and then just correct that at a later date. They would also want to make sure that they're including things such as any child support that has been received. It's really critical for those families because they're not going, if you're paying child support to someone, you don't get to include that student in your household. Okay, so if someone pays child support, that student is not in their household, or that child is not in their household for FAFSA purposes. But we do want to give credence and credit to those families and that expense that they are incurring because it is oftentimes court-ordered. They want to include any interest income, veterans non-education benefits, and that is both for the student and for the parent. They also, in many cases, but not all, may have to report about their actual liquid money, right? Like cash, savings, checking. Are there does it ask every single student for that information on the FAFSA? Most students it will, but there are some students that based on what they entered on the adjusted gross income, they may have an income that's not high enough and a household size that's big enough that the government's going to say, do you want to skip the remaining questions about you and your parents' income and assets? And every time it gives them that option, I tell them to click yes, that they can skip those remaining questions. Okay, so not all students are going to get asked this question. And that's actually a call that we do get occasionally, the students online doing their FAFSA, and they'll say, Julie, I'm not getting the question that I thought it was going to ask about my, how much money I have in my savings account. And then we go through and kind of chat about well, what were you entering before? And they go, oh, okay, your income was less than $21,000, so you don't have to report that, and report your cash savings and checking. So they also will need to include things like investments, including real estate. But do we include the home that we live in as an asset? No. Do we know why that is? You live there. You have to have a place to live, right? The government, oddly enough, there are actually some nice people up there in Washington. I swear to you, there are actually some nice people there. And they do not expect you to sell your home to send your kid to college. Okay, so we reassure a lot of families, a lot of parents. You are not expected to go sell your home just so you can send your kid to college. So you do not include the home that you live in as an asset. Well, let's say that you're some big real estate tycoon or something and you have all these rental houses that you rent in New York City. You do need to include those as an asset because you could sell those and send your kid to college. Okay? I apparently need to invest in some real estate. And this is a question that we do have some students that their parents own farms. Okay, this is Kansas that we're talking about. There's some farmland that they own. Now, if they live on that farm, it's not an asset because again, it's where we live and that is their source of income. But if they live in the city and they have this farm out here and we call it an investment farm, that's an asset. They need to include that on the FAFSA. Does that kind of maybe clear up a little bit of why it says farm investment farm? Okay. So we're ready to move on to the next one. And this is asking you to go a little activity, so you guys can spin around to your computers. And I guess are they in teams?
It says, yeah, they can just go with the person next to them.
Okay.
And then if we have an extra person, she can pair up.
Have a little group of three.
Except for one, yeah, we are all female, huh? I mean, from our team, so we have 10 here, but yeah.
And so you're going to go out to FAFSA.gov, and you're going to find the About Us page, and read the who we are and what we do. And we're going to be asking you some questions when you guys come back from that. Stephanie, you want to kind of gauge who you are?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, they're with that. Because one of our collar guys came in one time, and this one is particularly hard to get on with that little detail. So one time I tried to put a whole bunch of the markers together, because they stick together, and see it didn't work well either. You're doing it after. Oh, okay. You're supposed to be in groups of two.
Or something, just like what is available, you know, like
Right, for you.
does that make sense? Like, just a picture. He said some places just a picture, something like that. And we just thought, this is what I thought. It's similar to him. Yeah, I can just send him this, or we can, do we have to back yeah, we get to send him this. Yeah, or we can just do, right, we can just do it. That's fine, I just didn't know that will be as much of, I don't know, I'm gonna send this to you, they can choose which one they would. Yes.
All right, you got about 5 more minutes, but it sounds like you guys are done. All right, it sounds like there's a lot of chatter, so I guess we're ready.
All right, so someone tell me something, one group tell me what you learned about who we are. So who are these people that do the FAFSA? Okay. Debbie?
Yes. They provide more than $110 billion in federal grants.
Okay, so they provide a lot of money, right? Billions of dollars. Okay.
Employees.
Okay. And Brittany, you had something to add?
A lot of students, 15 million students paying college. A lot.
15 million students that are receiving federal student aid. That's a lot of students. Anyone else having something else you want to add? Good with that. The reason that we really encourage students to file the FAFSA, even if we get this question a lot, well, what if I don't think I'm going to qualify for anything? My parents make too much money. Okay? You don't know until you apply, because you don't know what you might actually qualify for. There was a study done about 4 years ago that looked at a population of students, and they extrapolated from their data that there were about 4 million students that had not applied for financial aid. And of those 4 million, 1.5 million, which is about a third of that 4 million, a third would have actually qualified for a Pell Grant. They would have qualified for the free money. That's excluding the students that would have at least got an unsubsidized loan. Okay, because everyone pretty much gets, most people get something, right? except for those students that exceeded their aggregate loan, or Pell Grant limits, that kind of thing. Okay. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next.
Okay.
Slide. Okay. Oh, is there a what we do section? Anyone have anything to add on the what we do?
23 million FAFSA submissions each year.
That's a lot of FAFSAs. So they process all the FAFSAs, and they're the ones that are communicating out to the Department of Homeland Security, Social Security Administration, Department of Veterans Affairs. They're checking out those types of things. Okay.
They do it quickly too.
Yeah, and they do it very quickly. Usually once the student files their FAFSA, we can get their results within 3 to 5 business days. So that's when they apply earlier, but as school gets closer and more students are in a panic and there's this rush of students that are trying to apply, like at the end of July and at the beginning of August, it takes a little bit longer. Yeah, it could take up to weeks for that to be processed, but typically if they apply early enough, it's pretty fast turnaround.
And we pull in ICERs daily into our office Monday through Friday. In the McDonald's drive-thru. And so we're going to pull in those ICERs every single day. So if they submit it on Monday, there's a really good shot that I might be pulling that in as early as Friday. The next slide is going to talk about all our different types of financial aid that we offer at Wichita State in terms of our federal and state resources. And what's actually missing up here are our standard ones that we have. I didn't catch that. But what is the most common type of financial aid that everyone wants but not all of us get? Pell, right? Pell grants, okay? And what are 2 types of loans that are also the standard offers? Subsidized and unsubsidized. What's the difference between a subsidized and an unsubsidized loan?
Subsidized, the government pays the interest.
Subsidized, the government is going to cover the interest while the student is in school. Okay? And the unsubsidized does accrue interest. Now, do you have to be making payments on those loans while you're in school? No. Okay? But you could pay the interest on that unsubsidized loan that accrued if you got that extra $60 at the end of the year. I never really had the extra $60 at the end of the year. Occasionally I did. And you could pay that interest because then that means that that money is not going to capitalize into the bottom of that loan. Some of the little extras, remember I talked about sprinkles that we have at Wichita State? So here's the little sprinkles that go on top of that banana sundae or whatever that we have going on. So we have the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. It's a very limited fund, though, that we have at Wichita State. And we'll go into all the details of these later on in the presentation. There's actually the specifics about each of the programs. But we also administer federal work study, where they can get that job working on campus, work in one of our offices, work up to about 20 hours per week, and get a regular paycheck, just like all the rest of us. The benefits for the students to do work study are that when they do their FAFSA the next year, they're actually going to enter that income that they earned in their work study job in 2 places. They're going to enter it where they entered all of their income that they earned, and then there's another little check mark box that they're going to mark that says I earned this amount as work study. And what it does when the federal processor is looking at their FAFSA and determining their EFC, the expected family contribution, it's going to take that money they earned in work study and it's going to pull it out, because that money was meant to be used for this previous academic year, not saved for next year. Okay? This is just kind of a rule of thumb. It's not the official percentage. But if you